Well, I think we're recording here. Hello and welcome back to the story of me. Um, I believe that we're on chapter 6. Um, and I got a whole lot of ums going on here. I'm so glad you've joined me for another chapter. And if you've been following along this far, then thank you for following along because it has been quite a journey so far. And in this chapter, is where I meet the father of my children and my second husband. And so this chapter, I wouldn't have thought it was going to be a hard chapter for me, but I think I've put it off almost as long as I possibly could have. Um, because I guess I've got some sticking points here and a lot of anxiety behind this chapter. And it's something that I didn't think I was going to feel. And so it's interesting to have these feelings and get to acknowledge these feelings. And so I'd like to preface this chapter by saying that your story is important and that you have the right to tell your story, even if your voice is shaking. And so I feel like my voice is shaking, even if it may not sound like it. It sure does feel like it on the inside. And so with that, I guess here we go into our next chapter of me. I even made some notes this time because I don't know, honestly, if I'm even going to get this chapter done in one sitting. This covers, at least the relationship part of it, covers about 10 years of my life. And I've had several more on top of that. So I will say that I always had heard, be careful of the partner you choose. And I had learned that in other partners. You would have thought I would have learned that in other partners, but be careful of the partner you choose because they can have a great impact on your life. And this is, for me, an example of that. There were red flags I saw early on in this relationship that should have sent me running, and they didn't. I continued to stay for 10 years, on and off. But seeing as how this is October when I'm recording this, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I did not want to let this entire month go by without getting this chapter recorded. So, with that, here we go. I met him in 2006, fresh out of my first marriage. Really didn't get the concept of a rebound relationship, and you can't shoulda, woulda, coulda your life, but that's where it shoulda ended. And it didn't. And so if there is such a thing as soul contracts and things that we're set to learn in this life, I believe that this was part of mine and still continues to be. I don't carry the heaviness that I used to with it. There's been a lot of healing and growth, and there's still a lot more healing and growth that I need to. I don't like those needs and generalizations, but there's more growth and healing that could be done. And I'm sure will be done. And so I met him at a clean and sober Super Bowl party. Like I said in previous chapters, I was trying to find myself at this point in my life and really hadn't experienced much. I had experienced a lot, but I hadn't experienced the normal things in life, if you will. And so I felt like I had missed out on a whole lot of things, a whole lot of rites of passage, and so I just felt like I had missed out on a whole lot of what I had perceived as rites of passage for people in life. And that is conditioning, that is a self-limiting belief, that is so many things and not necessarily true. We all have our own journey and things that we get to learn in this life. And just because somebody else's walk looks different than yours doesn't mean that you're missing something or you should have had something or whatever you want to put in there. We all have a different journey, and that's part of the beauty of life. And so saying to my younger self, the shoulda, woulda, couldas or missing things out, that's not a thing. I got to have my journey the way that I was supposed to, in a way that would develop me the way that I'm supposed to develop in the grand scheme of my soul's development, in my opinion. And so I was at that point in my life trying to, uh, I guess, get some of that, to experience some of that. And so this whole dating thing and coming into my own and embracing my femininity, and I was still in my 20s at this point. And so my concept of all of that is completely different now than it was then. And to be honest, as much as I remember those years, the mindset, really, yeah, no, I was all over the map. I really was just all over the map, and that's not a wrong thing. And looking back, I can smile at that girl and love her and appreciate her for who she was and who she was wanting to become. And I just didn't know how to get there. And so I was kind of flirting around with guys, and had already had a situationship, I guess, if you want to call it that, with the guy. And I met this one, had a clean and sober Super Bowl party. And I had brought a dish because it was like this potluck thing, and was looking forward to the football. I used to really enjoy watching football and being all up in it, and so I like to talk my smack. And so if you know anything about me, on a personal level, yeah, I can be pretty snarky sometimes, so that's part of my charm. Uh, and so I had been looking forward to this, and I had gone with another friend or two, or was supposed to go with a couple other friends, but only one of them showed. Vague memories. And this chapter is full of those. And so I had brought like this spinach artichoke dip I had made in a bread bowl, and I was really, really excited about. I was really excited about this. And we get there, and it was another building of the part of the treatment center and transitional housing thing I was living at and part of at this point in my life. It's where my mom had been, and she did not have housing yet. I had to think back real hard, because she still had a bed in the room. I used to be in a room with a bunch of other women. We all had our own space or whatever. I'm really grateful for that particular place. They're still in business today, and they do a lot to help a lot of people, and I don't know where I would have been without the people that I met there and the particular program. But just for the sake of any indemnity or what have you, I'll try to keep all names and such out of my chapters. I guess if you know, you know. Or if you really want to know, you can get a hold of me. So I was in a shelter trying to find myself. And I met this guy, and I tell you what, he had the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen, and I was instantly captivated. And I don't know, maybe he put a spell on me, wondering at this point in my life. And I wasn't big on playing sports. I've always been kind of awkward and not that coordinated. And I say those things, and I know that they are like self-limiting beliefs. I do try to get around those things, but I do. I'm not as physically able as some other people are, and so that's okay. And I'm learning to work around that, and I could work harder at it. I just haven't made it a point to. So, sports was never my thing, I guess I should have said. But I got out there and shot some hoops. I think we played horse or around the world, or some game. I don't know, but there was body checking, and there was flirting, and just the whole banter thing when you like somebody that you met, or at least in my situation at that time. And before the day was out and he left, I hadn't seen him around before. I gave him my number, and I'd never done that before, but I just had this feeling like I wouldn't see him again if I didn't give him my number. And dang it, if I could go back. No, I'm just playing. Would have saved a lot of heartache, but I also wouldn't have a lot of the blessings I have in my life today. So, again, no shoulda, woulda, couldas. Everything happens the way it's supposed to. And for a reason, and for good reason. So, checking my notes here so I don't completely go off track. Let's see here. Yeah, all I saw was his smile and his charisma. I was just totally infatuated. And I didn't know he was an addict. And we got to hanging out some, and I started getting warnings from people. I think my mom and her boyfriend even warned me about this guy, and I had a deaf ear to it. I actually had to be reminded that I was warned because I had turned such a deaf ear to this. And so we had been hanging out, dating, seeing each other, whatever you want to call it. Hey, don't eat that. For a while. And so he took me out to a really nice restaurant. I would think it was like Valentine's Day or something. And so I had this whole idealistic, romanticized thing going on in my brain. And yeah, this relationship was not that. So he took me out to a nice restaurant. We had a nice time, and we got even closer. And things were good for a while. Things were really good for a while. Too good. Too good. And we had plans, and I want to say he blew them off or something. And he said he was helping somebody move. And I jokingly said something about save some for me. Remember, I was, I had partied and played around, but I did not think I was an addict at that point in my life. Except for maybe weed. I felt like I had a problem with weed, but yeah, no, that was probably the thing keeping me sane. I'm not justifying anybody's anything, but that was probably the least of my concerns, let me say. I was a social drinker, didn't drink a whole lot, it just, yeah, this would be the turning point in my life for all of that. Like I said, I didn't know he was an addict and would find out real soon. And I didn't realize, even though, I had family that had addiction issues, I had not personally experienced addiction on the level that I did throughout these experiences, like I did with this person, and through these experiences, and even for my own self too, because this would be the start of all of that. And so, although he was all nice and shiny on the outside, I finally caught a glimpse of the beast underneath. And like I said in the beginning of this chapter, I should have ran when I saw the red flags. I should have. This person sitting in front of you, this healed version, man, if I saw anything like that at this point in my life, I would not even hesitate. Like, it wouldn't even be a question. And so I'm grateful for growth and healing and boundaries. And maybe without these experiences, I wouldn't have that. Because I tell you what, this is through the ringer. And this is why I think I've had such a hard time even sitting down to do this chapter. Because, oh my heck. And maybe that's a good reason I need to go through this chapter. And so, it was so long ago. I mean, coming up on close to 20 years now. And a lot of memories I don't have anymore, or that aren't on the surface anyway. And so I have blips, and forgive me ahead of time if I get my blips mixed up. I'm sure part of it's just trauma brain as well, and these are parts of my story that I really haven't gone into great detail with anyone, with the exception of if you were walking with me during these times in my life. And so we ended up partying together, and I got to see a glimpse of him, and I did not realize that he enjoyed drugs the way he did. I could take it or leave it, and especially this wasn't my DOC, and for those of you who don't know what that means, because I didn't for a long time, even through my addictions, it means drug of choice, and so it definitely wouldn't have been mine, but it became the one I did for quite a while, so, I was in a shelter at the time, and I was on my way to getting housing and getting things figured out, and this became a big detour, and I ended up leaving the shelter and moving in with him at his mom's because that was a good idea. I was in my 20s and 30s, close to my 40s. These were lessons that took me a few times, I guess, of getting. So I gave up my shelter for this person who I had already seen red flags with. Just heartbreaking, that alone. I had already seen the anger, the schizophrenia, a glimpse of the ugly. And I proceeded to move forward. And so his mom was really good to me. I really admired her and looked up to her, and even still to this day, we're not as close as I would have liked for us to have been. And there's been a lot of water under the bridge, I guess, is the appropriate term for all of us in our relationships. And some of these people I still interact with in my present life, and some of these people I've chosen to not interact with in my present life. And so here's another hurdle I've had in making this chapter. As true to myself as I want to be, and as open and vulnerable as I want to be about my story, and I'm allowed to be. I know that. I am still doing my best to narrate this in the most healed, positive, loving, compassionate version of myself as I possibly can. Like I said, I still have healing in places here, and I have wounds that, if I were to sit and think about them, would probably bring me to tears, even to this day. But moving on, I'm sure that'll come. And so, thus began the 10 years of learning a whole bunch of hard lessons. One of the lessons is you cannot save someone who does not want to participate in a rescue. It does not matter how much you love a person. It does not matter how much potential you see in someone. If they don't see it in themselves, if they don't want it for themselves, and if they're not willing to do the work for themselves. People get clean and sober and heal all day, every day for a multitude of reasons. But in the end, if you're not doing it for yourself, for me personally, I don't think it sticks. You know, I've been in recovery before in different parts of my life and for long periods of my life, and for whatever the reason, I guess I still had more lessons to learn. I sit here today with 4.5 years clean and sober, and I'm so ever grateful for that. I would not have the life I have today if it was not for my recovery and my intent to heal and do better and be better. And I just pray every day that I'm better than I was. And so I moved in with him and his mom. And his youngest brother may have still even lived there at the time. And it was all good in the beginning. And he was good at hiding his use from his mom and his family, at least when he'd first use. Then after a couple days, it was not hideable. He would turn into a different person. I wouldn't know how to be. It was a very awkward thing for me. I didn't like any of it. And God, I don't know why I put myself through it, but I did. And so I don't know how long we lived with her at this particular time, because it happened several times throughout the years, and I am grateful for every time she opened her home to us. I really am. It couldn't have been easy for her either, and I'm sure it still isn't. And my heart breaks for that. Again, people aren't going to get clean and sober until they're ready to. And some people, unfortunately, don't make that choice to. But we ended up moving out, or we had some wild idea we were going to go, because his mom and dad were divorced and had, separate lives, and had for many, many years, and their separate families and the whole 9 yards. And so I think we were going to go out to his dad's or something. And so we took my car to an airport, bought tickets, got on a plane, mailed my keys to his mom. I don't think she ever got them. I lost my car. The first car I lost with him, but this was the car that I had come with. This was my car. I gave up a lot. I let a lot go for many reasons throughout this relationship. And it's just stuff. I remember him telling me in one of the last fights we had, and many times over, it's just stuff. It's just stuff. But some of that stuff is not replaceable over the years. Things like pictures and mementos and children's trophies and lives created. Some things you just can't get back. And so, even though it was just stuff, there are things that I've let go over the years for whatever the reasons that still pains me. And I guess maybe I need to forgive myself on that. Here's where these chapters start getting to me, right? And so we went to go out to another state to go be with his dad, and I think we got out there, if I remember right, and because we weren't married, we weren't allowed to come out. So we had to make other plans very quickly, and I don't really recall how all of that went, but I do know that we ended up going to another town in that state, and that's where he had 3 children from his first marriage, and they were my first babies, and they weren't really babies at the time, but they'll always be my first babies. They're all grown women now with families of their own, so, and lives of their own, and I couldn't be more proud of them. But I got to meet them and his ex-in-laws and his first wife, and God rest her soul. It was kind of awkward, and I'm sure I'll fill that in later. And I wanted so bad to be like the awesome stepmom. Ha! Man, again, I had all these romantic, idealistic ideas of how I wanted to be and show up. And this person that I had chosen as my partner, I just wasn't able to when I was with them. I didn't know how to have healthy boundaries. I didn't know how to be true to myself. And that's something I'm still working on today. And maybe we all work on that throughout our whole lives. I think some people are naturally gifted with it, but I could be wrong. I've really struggled with my authenticity over the years because I was a big-time codependent and people pleaser. And I didn't want to lose people. I had abandonment issues. And I guess these are all wounds that my behavior was exhibiting from. They were all heart conditions. And the fears and anxieties I had, I didn't know how to be any other way. And that's okay. I hold space for that version of myself. And I'm learning to forgive those parts of myself, I guess. And doing these chapters, I guess, seemed to help with that. And I'm very grateful, again, that you're following along and listening. And, yeah, thank you. And so, in all of those relationships and interactions I had with all of those people in my life, I wanted to be able to show up in a certain way, and I wanted to be perceived in a certain way, and I guess that's really naive of me. And that was just my present level of awareness at the time, because those are things we have no control over. And I've since learned, and I find this very interesting, it still just tickles the heck out of me, that did you know that for every person that you know and have interactions with, they have a completely different version of you in their head? So you may hold a version of you in your own mind, but that's your perception of yourself. And everybody else has a completely different one, completely unique to their own experiences and beliefs and whatever your interactions are like. And so, yeah, naive a little bit on my part to want to control the way I was being perceived. But I did. I wanted to be the great stepmom. I wanted to be the great daughter. I wanted to be the perfect wife. How Stepford of me. I had all these preconceived notions on how I thought life was supposed to be. And these tears are grieving those rose-colored lenses, I suppose. Oh my gosh. And so I had my own challenges in my home and in public and everywhere. And being able to show up as the person I wanted to be. And maybe, that's a big life lesson for me right there. Because that's something I strive for at this point in my life. Hence me being authentic, or trying to be authentic, I guess. As authentic as I can be, and being vulnerable and putting my story out there like this. Because the pretense and the agendas, and I could have all the intentions in the world, but, I've learned and am learning that actions do truly speak louder than words. And that's where it's at, right? The small inspired actions. What are you doing every day to better yourself or to change your situation or whatever? This isn't the time for that, but, and I feel like I've just totally gone off track here, but again, I have a lot of emotion and apprehension with this chapter. There's still a lot of pain. I didn't realize. Dang it. Ouch. I don't want to admit that one. So we went in and out of our addictions. Him more so than me. I hated drugs before. I really hate them. But the experiences I had with that relationship and watching what addiction does to a person that you love, even if you don't like them, watching what addiction does to another human being is not a fun journey. It's not a fun seat to sit in, especially when you want to be able to save the person and they just don't want that. And so I spent years of my life fighting that. I finally came to the realization at the end of that relationship and all of that we just wanted different things. I wanted the happy little family, the white picket fence and the 2-point kids and all of that. And life is what you make it, yes. But it's not possible when it's only one person trying and the other one's consistently destroying everything you're creating. So we had good years and we had bad years. And they seemed to, kind of follow each other. He'd get clean for a while. Things would be good. We'd build a life. And he'd relapse. And everything would get burnt to the ground. Literally, metaphorically. He'd literally burn everything to the ground. I mean, not our rentals, because that wasn't ours to burn, I guess. It was just stuff. And every episode, every relapse, things would get a little bit worse. First couple I think I stayed for. Tried to pick up the pieces and rebuild, and there was a lot of pieces to rebuild. And then it would get to the point he'd relapse. I would take the kids and leave. And then I'd go back. Then I'd leave. Then I'd go back. My name is Lisa, and I'm a domestic violence survivor. There are statistics for this. And so while I want to be hard on myself because I kept going back, this is actually a thing that a lot of women encounter in domestically violent situations, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, financial, whatever the abuse looks like. We go back several times. And I did. I wanted to believe the best in him. I wanted my family. I wanted my daughters to have a father. I wanted his mom to have a happy, good son, and, everything was just. I wanted it all to work out, to my own detriment. This is one of those things that through the course of this relationship, boundaries, the importance of boundaries and self-care and loving yourself enough to protect yourself. Regardless how much you love the other person, you got to love yourself more. And even sitting here saying that feels like selfish, because somewhere in me, I guess that needs to be healed more. But man, who else is going to take care of you if you don't, right? And so I tried till I was blue in the face. Had interactions with authorities, and even losing custody of my children at one point when they were little, because I was trying to save him out of a relapse, and got them back super fast because I worked really hard, and he worked really hard, at least for that little blip of time. But it wasn't long after things were finalized and everything was back right that he was back doing, and I was back covering for him. And like I said, every episode got worse. The abuse got worse. I couldn't always protect my children from seeing or hearing, and he didn't really care who saw or heard or what. I remember him being on me in a gas station once, before I even had children, and somebody tried to say something, and it almost ended in like this big fight, which is even worse. I could never keep a job because he just couldn't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. So I'd end up having to no call, no show, just because the intimidation was so great. Giant man child. As careful as I want to be with my words, I'm not going to say anything I wouldn't say in person. And giant man child, some people just don't grow up, unfortunately, and still seems to be the case from what I gather. Which this is one of those relationships I choose to not have contact with, just for my own peace of mind. I am grateful he is in my children's life when he's good, and I hope he gets better. I really hope and pray one day he gets better. I hope they get to see the good side of him consistently. And for his mama too. Like I said, there's so much here. There are so many details, so many experiences, so many nightmarish things, a lot of which I don't care to divulge or relive or even think about. And I try to think of the bigger ones. And even those, man, it makes my body tired to even think about it. And I guess that's just the weight of the trauma in my body remembering. But yeah, it was 10 years of hell, putting it lightly. There are so many things looking back I would like to say I wish I would have done different, but again, everything happens the way it's supposed to. And this is a really, just, I guess, quick synopsis of chapter 6. And I know it's not even going to be that quick in the end, but like I said, I didn't want to let October go by without getting something out there in regard to this. And I have survived the domestic violence from him, from ones before him, and from a few after him. And I am so grateful that I don't have to do that anymore. And I pray for everybody out there having to go through that. It's no way to live. We all deserve so much better. Love doesn't treat you like that. And that used to just tear me up. How somebody could say they love you and then show you anything but. I've had broken ribs and a broken jaw, countless broken noses. I'm honestly, so grateful that, and I know this might sound crappy, that it's still in the middle of my face. I am. I'm so grateful for that. I have scars. Physical, visible scars on my face from him. Broken, or eyes that were blackened. My landlord even called me out on it one time, and then she started coming over a little more frequently just to make sure me and the kids were okay. I walked into a cabinet that time. We all deserve so much better than that. And I'm so grateful to see now that my children are getting older, they have some seriously healthy boundaries in places that I didn't. So I'm grateful to know that, and hope that they won't put up with the things I did. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go to the end of the earth for the people you love, because you should, and I still fully believe that. But you got to consider yourself along the way. I tried to kill myself a couple of times with him just because I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't want to fight anymore. I had gotten back on the mental medications, especially after my second baby. Just my mental health went downhill, and I really didn't have much of a support system. And so I ended up at one time, after I had left him in one of those periods, I ended up having to go to detox for all the prescriptions and mental meds they had me on. And it almost killed me. And I had a mini stroke while I was in there. I couldn't even tell you where I lived or how to drive a car or finish sentences at that point when I came out of there. I woke up about 3 or 4 days, I think it was 3 or 4 days, into that stay, and my ear had been bleeding on my pillow in the middle of the night, and it was like a fog had lifted, but at the same time I had lost a lot of faculties, and so it took me a long time to regain those faculties, and nobody really knew that. I had nobody to lean on or to trust in, and the relationships I did have were rocky at best, and yeah, those were just some really hard years in my life, and I'm really sorry to all of my relationships during that time. Because I wanted to show up so much better than I was behaving. And I'm sorry to my children. Ah. And so, as much sadness as I still feel about a lot of the things that happened over those years, I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And ultimately, I would not be the woman I am today without those experiences. And everything happens the way it's supposed to, right? And so I hold on to the hope for the good that comes out of the ugly that was there. I have 5 beautiful girls, 2 of which I gave birth to myself. The blessings there are priceless. And I'm just, I'm thankful I can sit here and I survived it. And maybe down the road, through the course of these chapters, I'll divulge more information and more experiences. Like I said, I just wanted to not let any more time get away before I came in and sat and told at least an overview of this particular part of my life. This part of my life changed me forever. Changed the way I look at life. Yeah. And you know what? My life today is beautiful, and I could not be more grateful. And so maybe sometimes we have to go through that dark you know, to appreciate the light. Um, I wouldn't know what love is had I not gone through what it wasn't. And in the end, I love myself better and am better able to love as a result of having seen what it looks like when somebody says they love and they don't. And I'm guilty of that too. This isn't, he was wrong, I was right type thing, or they were wrong, I was right type thing. These are just unfortunate experiences we sometimes have to go through in life. And the relationships I had as a result of what was going on in my life and how I was handling those things, that's all it's all a result of. And all I can do now is try to be better than I was then. And I'm grateful for the relationships I get to repair and mend today. Because I had a lot of fractured relationships after him and after the next few years, which, yeah, at least kind of went off the rails a little bit. Even more so. Trying to find myself again. But that's coming up a little bit later. And so yeah, again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for walking on this journey with me. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that you've gleaned something out of this chapter and all of my chapters in my story. If you have questions, as always, feel free to pop them in the comment section or reach out to me. I feel like there's so much more I want to say and just nothing's coming in right now. And so I just really thank you and I appreciate you. And I hope to not let as much time go by before I do the next chapter or set of chapters. And I'll talk to you again real soon. Have an inspired day. Bye for now.